Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first Hack Club AMA of July. I'm your host, Rishi Kotari, and I'm a rising sophomore at Turner Fenn Secondary School here in Canada. I'm so excited to have on the call with me a couple of amazing Hack Clubbers and the awesome Dylan Field. If you don't already know, Dylan's a CEO and founder of Figma, one of the largest design software companies in the world. It's grown to be a fan favorite for so many, and we regularly use it here at Hack Club. Before that, he studied at Brown University before stopping out of the math and computer science program to pursue Figma full time as part of the Thiel Fellowship, which, if you don't know already, was the same program that Hack Club was born out of. He's really interested in math, art, design, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. And his hacky pursuits make him the perfect guest to be on here. As always, if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, feel free to check out hackclub.com for more events like this one. If you're on the call right now, feel free to raise your hand by right-clicking on the Participants tab at any time to get the chance to ask a question. If you have a lightning question, feel free to drop it in the chat, where I'll ask it at random points to get everybody hyped up. Anyways, let's get on with the show. Dylan, I'd like to ask the first question. Everybody knows that the road to success isn't a straight one. What was the worst experience you had as a young entrepreneur building Figma, and how did you come out of it?
Sure. Well, first of all, just before we get into all the questions, just a huge thank you to y'all for having me. I am a huge fan of Hack Club and all the work that you all are doing. And so it's the sort of thing that I really wish existed when I was in high school. And just so stoked to see this in the world. In terms of hard experiences, I mean, I think, the hardest are the ones where the company like almost fell apart. And, it's like you could actually imagine it just no longer existing because if we like react in a slightly different way, maybe. And there's two that come to mind. The first was sort of in the exploratory phase. For context, I started Figma with my co-founder Evan, who is a total genius and much, much smarter than I am, in August 2012. And for the first, I don't know, until like June 2013, we were very much in more of an exploration mode and trying to figure out like, how do we, what are we going to build and, what makes sense from a business perspective. And I think we knew we wanted to do WebGL, something with WebGL, which is a way to use the GPU in your computer in the browser. We knew we wanted to probably do creative tools. We knew we cared a lot about accessibility of tools and making it so that more people could use those tools. We thought kind of agreed with a statement that Brett Victor made, which is that if you can't use a tool because it's too complex, it's a moral wrong. I'm sort of butchering that statement, but he said something that was even more eloquent than that, and it really resonated with us. As we were trying to figure out, okay, what exactly are we doing in that realm? We tried out lots of different things. And so we tried out some stuff around computational photography, photo editing, sort of like more classic Photoshop in the browser, image recombination, recomposition. And along the way, one of the things that we built and focused on for quite a while was a meme generator for like a week or two. And honestly, I think it was about a week. And, it was a kick-ass meme generator at the time. It was like, you have to remember, this is 2012. Meme generators online were really shit. And hopefully I'm allowed to say that word. And basically, like, because they were so bad, I thought, okay, if we can start to get SEO from meme generation onto Figma, then like from there we can introduce more tools and we'll start to build up an audience of people. And that was kind of the basic strategy idea. And after like a week of working on this meme generator, I remember looking at the mirror and just going, holy shit, like I dropped out of Brown for this. What am I doing with my life? Oh my God. And then I walked out of the bathroom after staring in the mirror for a while and just feeling really depressed. And then, an hour later, my co-founder Evan takes his headphones off and he's like, Dylan, I just can't do this. Like if you want to keep going the meme generator thing, I know we're almost there. Totally cool, go for it. But like, I'm gonna have to find another job. And so, of course, we're both like, okay, time to change directions again. And that, was one step into the right, a few steps after that, we eventually got to where we are today. But yeah, I mean, I think that was like one place where it was like, it felt like, usually you're offset from your co-founder and they might be on emotional high, it might be a low. And then from there, kind of that offset corrects things. But I think at that moment we were just both at this global low and it felt like everything was falling apart and it felt so existential, like why? And then ironically, actually though, the text generation stuff that we were doing, where it's basically doing compositing the text onto the canvas. That tech we were able to use later on for real Figma. So it wasn't a total waste in the end, but we didn't know then. Another time it almost fell apart was when I was a first-time manager. So I was around, I think we were around 10 people at this point. And if one thing I did not know going into Figma that you all should know if you're thinking about entrepreneurship is that the leadership is a skill you're probably all aware of. You're in clubs, maybe you're in sports teams, and you can experience leadership through those areas. But I think it's very rare before you get into professional settings to really experience management as a skill. And it's actually a very different skill from leadership. They're related, but they're different. And management is a skill that you have to build just like any other skill. And there's muscles and sort of different things you have to figure out about it. And a year into Figma, I was figuring out how to be a CEO. I was figuring out, what direction to take the product. And I was also figuring out how to hire people. But most of all, I was trying to figure out how to manage people. And it wasn't going so well. I made some hires that probably were, not the right fit in retrospect culturally. And I also wasn't empowering people enough. When you hire smart people, you got to give them a way to really contribute and to blow you away and to let you to do things that you would never think of. And if you micromanage and if you give people all the sort of here's exactly the recipe for what to do, they're not going to appreciate that if they're the right people to hire. And between all that, I think like at the same time, this is a few years in actually, but at the same time, my dad was actually dying of cancer. And so there's a lot of emotional stress that I was going through, which I think, exasperated things even further. And at some point, like there was a conversation with, this basically are my employees and, because there's so many things that were happening. And I was like, let's just all get together and talk about it. And it turned out kind of bad. It was, people were really unhappy with me. And it was a moment where, they're like, okay, we really need you really need to get help to help make this work. And eventually we did. We hired our first outside manager and I actually learned a lot from him. But that was a moment where, I was like, oh God, like it might all like collapse at this point. Like everyone might leave, this might be the end. And I think the other part of it was that we hadn't launched yet too. We were just months away, but we've been working on it for years. And so that was a really hard moment.
I mean, if that isn't a testament to human spirit, I don't think there's any better example than that. All right, so next up is Amog. Amog, go ahead and fire away.
All right. Hey Dylan, I'm Amog, a 17-year-old hacker and club leader from Connecticut. I've used Figma for hackathons, but also protest and activism. Something I really loved reading about was how Figma sponsored Vectors, the conference that talked about discrimination and barriers in tech. So my question is, how can Figma and other growing tech companies help take down the barriers that are so present in design and tech, both in their own companies, but also in their product?
Yep. First off, a big thank you for the question. And it's really nice to meet you too. I think, in case it's not obvious to everyone, it's important that, we all are sort of level set on that. Tech at this point is unfortunately is not as accessible as it should be to all people. And I think this is really important because if you look at the world economy, everything's becoming more digital. And as everything becomes more digital, I would hope that we are able to make it so that more people have an equal shot at accessing these opportunities for upward mobility that tech provides and entrepreneurship provides. And so I think that, there's a lot of systematic issues here at play. The question was sort of framed around how can we help? I think one of the ways that we're really trying to think about helping is through education. And, to be clear, I don't think that we're doing a great job here yet. I think we have a long way to go. But, I definitely want to figure out how do we get more people to be exposed to design early on. I think especially, at sort of the middle school, high school, college level, too few people know what design even means. I certainly, when I was in high school, I thought design was probably making things pretty. Or I don't even know what I would have told you. The reality was, I was doing design most days out of my life in high school. I went to a project-based my high school is called Technology High School, and we were very much project-based learning in our approach. And we're going through the design process like every week. I just didn't even know it. It wasn't until I was halfway through college that I realized that like I've been doing a lot of design work, even if it wasn't graphic design work, for a long time. And that was a core part of why I was motivated around technology, that, I wanted to build things for people, not just for, I think some people are, which is totally a valid reason too. Some people, they write code, it compiles, and they say, wow, in a universe that's chaotic and uncertain, the computer did exactly what I told it to do. And that's amazing. And that's cool and all, but like my motivation was always, how do we make it so that a person has a better experience, and like, how do you make products for people? And that's really, I think, more the design ethos. And I didn't even know it until, I'd done some internships. And so how do we get that message out earlier? How do we make it so that career paths are available? How do we get more resources? And also, how do you unpack the knowledge that all these companies hold around the design process? I think that there's, designers love to show sort of the shiny end product. And, it's like whatever is ready for the museum, basically, that's what they want to show you. And I think the more that we can create and change the culture around that and create a cultural norm, that it's okay to actually show the unfinished work, the iterations that led to what became the final thing, the more that people don't have imposter syndrome around, the fact that they are not like able to get to that final result, because the reality is that final result probably took 6 months to get to, and you just didn't see the work that went into it. So I think there's some cultural change. I think that there's a lot of access problems, and I think that there's just not enough seats in design schools in the first place. But also, I think that and obviously I'm a bit biased. The Teal Fellowship has been a big impact in my life, but I just don't think there should be. You shouldn't have like a college degree that's needed in order to necessarily be a designer. I think it's much more important to be able to have that education, and also to have some work experience. And so how do you provide those experiences for people, and how do we as an industry do that? And then finally, sorry, there's so much on this topic, so it's just like just a subset of the things you could talk about. But I think finally, there's just big questions, I think, around how do you make it so that at senior levels, there's more representation from all sorts of backgrounds. I think that there's unfortunately not much representation from women and from people of color right now at sort of the highest levels of design leadership, at least that I've seen. And I really hope that will change over the next 10 years. And because there definitely are qualified people out there. That's not the issue, in my opinion. This is mostly focused domestically so far. I think there's also a lot we can talk about internationally. For Figma, 81% of our weekly active users are outside the United States. And so I think that, one trend we're seeing, we're kind of talking about this before the call, is that more companies are going remote. There's a lot of complexity actually around how do you hire somebody, and that can be maybe outside of your geographic zone. There's a lot of accounting complexity there, as well as HR complexity. But as the world starts to figure that out more, I really hope that there'll be more of a level playing field for people coming from other areas as well to get into design, because there are designers that are everywhere.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a great answer.
Of course. And I mean, just thank you again for asking the question, because it's a really important one.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Those are some really, really interesting insights. You mentioned that you went to a project-based high school. If you can remember any like weird or wacky high school inventions or things that you made, what were they?
Well, most of my weird stuff I made was like outside the context of the classroom, I think. I don't know. I was really interested in just like web development in general. And so I did some stuff around like, I made a website called like Rate Talks, where you could like submit a talk and then rate it and discover other talks. I made I don't know, I did some weird science fair projects. I did a bunch of stuff for my robotics team. I wouldn't say that's wacky or weird, just in the context of FIRST, that was a lot of fun. Spent some time just trying to understand systems better, not to the extent that probably I should have in retrospect, but I just didn't necessarily know where to get the resources for that at that point. And then I was also like in high school, I was just very focused on math and science, or especially math really. The school was sort of had the project-based learning part of it was that science and engineering were a combined block. And basically engineering was a quote unquote mandatory elective, which I love that oxymoron. And basically whenever you're doing a science concept or learning a science concept, you often had like an engineering project to go along with it. So, okay, like you're learning biology and about the human body, and okay, so go to the wood shop and make a jaw, and figure out the hinges there or something. The And then on the math side, I think I got really interested in stats and just sort of data analysis in high school as well, and data visualization. And so that was like, I don't know if it's like weird or wacky, but that was something that was really exciting to me then, and still is actually.
Yeah, project-based learning is actually one of the real, like, it's one of the core ideals of Hack Club. I think a lot of us can relate to that. Anyways, so reminder for everybody, when you're first asking a question, remember to introduce yourself, where your Hack Club is, and how old you are. So next up is Jason. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Jason, and I'm from Leander, Texas. And I wanted to ask, if you could talk to yourself from 10 years ago, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I think there's some meta advice I have to give here, and I try to say this everywhere because too few people know it. And the meta advice is like when someone's giving you advice, they're giving themselves advice in your shoes. So just it's important, I think, to filter life advice through that lens, because you're the only person who knows you completely, and so uh, just wanted to give that disclaimer. But I think that if I was talking to myself 10 years ago, I'm 28 now, so I'd be 18. At that point, I would have been a freshman at Brown, or sorry, I guess it'd be my second semester. I graduated high school when I was 17. I think I probably would encourage myself to take more classes at RISD, which was right next to Brown, and I just never got a chance to do it. It required like a lot of scheduling and figuring that out. I always wish I could have taken more RISD classes, and I didn't know exactly which ones to take at the time, and yeah, that's something I regret. And I also wish I'd taken more math, despite being a math CS concentrator. I just didn't take enough math, and that's been something that I found to be hard to self-motivate to study outside of an academic context. So those are two things that I would probably tell myself. The things that I was already doing at 18 that I would encourage all of you to do if you're interested in entrepreneurship and software in particular, is just make stuff. In high school, I told you about some of the stuff I was doing, which was pretty minor and not like there's any businesses there. But in college, started to do more, to go to hackathons, work with friends on projects. Like we made like a course finder application that was social with Facebook, and so you could see like what your friends were taking, and also you can get recommendations for like what classes you might want to take based on the history of who's taken classes at Brown. We were able to get access to like all the course pair data through the administration, which is really cool. And like working on that project for 6 months, it started off as like a class project, and then we kept going and eventually shipped it. We went through so many iterations, and that is a thing I think that probably prepared me more for Figma than anything else. Internships help too, of course, but just like challenging yourself to constantly evolve the same idea, even if it's not going to be the idea that you work on, in several years. Just anything you can build, it's good. You should do it.
All right, that's actually, yeah, those are some really, really cool insights. All right, so we have our first trio of fireside questions, or lightning questions, I should say. So these are like the same 3 questions that everybody wants to get answers to. When you program, do you like Vim or Emacs more? Do you like light mode or dark mode better? And do you use tabs or spaces?
I'm more of a Vim guy. I've never really got deep on Emacs. I think I kind of alternate between light mode and dark mode. I think I'm currently in a dark mode phase, despite Figma not having dark mode. So I'm aware that's probably. Please don't ask me that follow-up question. I can't answer it. And then tabs or spaces. Honestly, I mean, I think like it depends on the code base I'm in, and I just try to follow the convention. I'm not like a religious person there, but like if I'm just doing like a script, I'll probably be using Python, and I'll probably be using tabs. So probably tabs in that context.
Yeah, Amog's signaling the win right there. All right, so our next question will come from Samyukta. Take it away.
Yeah, okay. Hi, and my name is Samyukta. I'm a Hack Club leader from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm 16. And so my question for you is during like quarantine, what would you say has been the most either important thing you like learned or something like special that you've learned about yourself or made or just experience, something that you're going to be taking away from this experience that you will inform how you move forward beyond quarantine or whatever?
It's a great question. I'm super curious what all of your answers are too. For me, I think that there's a few things that come to mind first. I mean, like I kind of have referenced throughout the call. I think that we've all been in this sort of remote experiment right now, and we're seeing where it works, where it doesn't work, and there's a lot of learnings and takeaways there. For me personally, as a leader, and the context here is Figma's around 210 people right now. I think for me, I think it's sometimes you ask yourself like, how bold or how like strong should I be as a leader, right? And should I be like really pushing strong opinions, or should I be more ambiguous? There's kind of like a spectrum there, and you could kind of argue for different sides, different points in time. And what I found through quarantine is that people have really needed that strong leadership. They've needed the communication, the context of like how things are going, what's happening. And the more that I've given sort of that strong leadership to the company, the more I've gotten like a positive feedback from my employees saying they really appreciate that. And so that's something that I've taken away is that it's okay to kind of like to do that. Not that I wasn't before, but I think I've kind of like doubled down that more as in that leadership style now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Amazing. Yeah, I definitely think you need to strike that balance. Next up is Saharsh. Take it away.
Hey, my name's Saharsh. I'm a 16-year-old club leader from Westborough, Massachusetts. And my question for you is, if your house is burning down and you could only save one item, what would you run back to go grab?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I think the practical answer is my laptop. But like, if I'm not allowed to get my laptop, the more interesting answer might be, I have some art that I really love, which is there's a designer named Nick Felton, and he's the guy who designed Timeline originally, actually. And he has a series of annual reports that he's made. He made for a period of, I think, 10 years. Now he's on other projects, but it was sort of a commentary on, corporate versus individual, as well as sort of like who owns data and like, what do we do with all the data exhaust that's happening in our lives? Which is, I think some of these questions are things that are a bit more part of the popular vernacular now, but at the time he was doing it was, I think they were less things people were thinking about. And what he did was every year he basically collected as much data as he could about himself, and he made this like amazing, beautiful report on his life. And so I've got like, I think 6 or 7 of the 10. And so I think I'd probably try to grab those. They're really special to me.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, that was a super interesting question. I actually want to see that project.
It's really cool. Google Nick Felton and annual report. It's really neat. He goes by Feltron on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I highly, highly recommend the Data is Beautiful subreddit. That's always been a favorite of mine. Yeah, next up is Matthew. Fire away.
Hey, Dylan. My name is Matthew. I'm a Hack Club alumni, now studying design at UC Davis.
Oh, and
cool. I'm a huge fan of Figma and was actually the one who mentioned you on the tweet on the Hack Club at AMA.
Thank you for bringing me in.
Thank you for being here. And my question was, what is the coolest thing that you've actually designed on Figma?
Wow. That's a hard question. I mean, I think, well, the obvious meta answer is that we designed Figma in Figma. So I guess that's definitely part of it. I think maybe the coolest thing that I personally have done, or at least the one that's like most time intensive that's not Figma, is early on when we were trying to sort of test our vector capabilities, and I was trying, I was kind of in this mode of, we're a small team, like maybe 5 or 6 people at that point. I kept trying to basically make more and more complex documents that would basically test our systems and show the performance constraints we're under, that then the team could take and like optimize for. And one of the things I made was basically like a triangulated mesh of my co-founder. So you probably have seen these, like, you take a picture and you basically like do a triangle mesh over it, and every triangle is like a color. So I made that for my co-founder, and it took me forever, like, I mean, maybe like 10 to 12 hours or something, and it was crazy, just to really get it right. And then so I give it to him, and he was, he was, I think, very pleased with it. And the next day, he's like, "Okay, Dylan, here's yours." I was like, "Whoa, you spent like 12 hours on it?" He's like, "Oh no, I spent like half an hour on it." I'm like, "How did you do this in half an hour?" He's like, "Oh, well, I made the general solution." And he basically made a program that for any image could generate like a triangle mesh, and you could have sliders to see, just to get it like perfect. And I was just like, "Oh, Evan." So that's probably one of the cooler things. And then Evan automated it, which was, I have mixed feelings about, but yeah, it was pretty cool.
Very awesome. I mean, yeah, I think a pretty cool hackathon idea would be trying to design like a fully working prototype of Figma in Figma. I don't know, just an idea. Our next question will come from Sam. Go ahead.
Oh, actually, one more thing I'll add before we go to the next question. One other thing that's really fun to make in Figma is more on the plugin side. So it's kind of a combination. I'm not sure if it's designed, but for one of our Maker Weeks, I made a plugin that was like it basically was emulating the experience of like Microsoft Windows 98 inside of Figma as a plugin, and you could like actually like open apps and like do stuff in it. Not obviously, it wasn't like actually Windows 98, but it was pretty sweet. It was like a whole Windows system. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, the meme generator idea still isn't fully dead.
There you go.
All right, go ahead. Ask your question, Sam.
Hello, my name's Sam. I'm a hack club leader in not so sunny Singapore right now. My question for you, I guess, is looking back since you started Figma, what's like the funniest moment from the company's journey?
One funny moment, I don't know if this is the funniest moment. One funny moment for me personally was this kind of, I thought about this after the music question. We have a sort of, we call it a variety show that we do every year at Figma. And it's the sort of motto is, it used to be when we started, when we were small, it was participation is mandatory, but talent is optional. And now, as we've grown and you can't have everybody in the same show, it's participation is optional and talent is also optional. Anyway, but I try to do a performance every year. And this last year I did a rap, did Alphabet Aerobics by Blacklicious. And it was fun because no one had ever seen me rap before. And I'm not that great, but like at the same time, it's a hard one. And definitely people were like, we're just kind of like had really funny reactions, which I thought was funny at least. So
for now, we have another lightning round question. This one is coming from Dina. What's your favorite type of music?
Depends on my mood. I think if I'm like in the car driving, likely like rap right now. If I'm like trying to pump myself up, probably more like classic rock or sort of like I mean, I love Rage Against the Machine as well. That's, I guess, it's more rap. But I think like if I'm trying to do work, it's more electronic music. So I have a playlist that I can pull up the name of if you're curious about it on Spotify that I've listened to a lot recently. It's called Lo-Fi Hip Hop Music Beats to Relax Study to. I'm obsessed with it. So I'll share it via a link real fast in the chat. And then I also really like Rat-a-Tat. That's like just music that I know I can always put on, and then I can just do work. It's like for some reason primes me right. Really appreciate classical music though as well, and I go through phases once in a while where I get really deep on classical and just kind of nerd out there. So yeah, it's but honestly, I mean, like I have a lot of appreciation for a lot of different genres too, and so if I'm with somebody who likes a particular musician, it's very rare that I'm not interested. One sort of musician or group that I've been listening to recently because they just dropped a new album was the Goat Rodeo Sessions. They had an album out, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It was a while back, and then is more on the classical side. And then recently they just came up with a new one that there's a few songs in there that are so good. So highly recommend checking that out.
Yeah, I used to have a huge Rat-a-Tat phase in grade 7, I think. Fremont
Nice.
was one of the classics. All right, next up is Mahmoud. Fire away.
So my name is Mahmoud Ridwan, and I lead the STEM Institute Hack Club in Egypt. And I would like to ask you that, do you think that one day website builders like Wix.com and Squarespace will take off the web development industry, or it will be the same thing? Thanks.
Well, first of all, Mahmoud, thank you for joining from Egypt. It's awesome. So to make sure I understand the question, it's like, do I think that Wix or Squarespace will make it so that people no longer are doing front development? Is that right? Or
yeah, or the most of it.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think there's like a trend of, if you look at proportion of sites that are being created, I think it's getting higher from these sort of tools like the ones you just mentioned, or another one is Webflow. I think, I don't know, I suspect there's always going to be space for people doing custom stuff outside of sort of the boundaries of those tools. We've seen people try to get to the point where everything can be created in a tool. And I think if you're mapping to front-end development, it becomes, unless the standards change in a different way, I think it becomes quite hard to be able to do that mapping without introducing a lot of complexity to the tool. There's sort of this relationship between power and complexity for tools that's really important. And I think that the thing that we're always trying to figure out in Figma, for example, is how do you add power to a tool while not also adding complexity? So like as we add more powers or features, we'll oftentimes, do it in a way that's maybe a bit more hidden, or it's not intimidating for the new user. Because there's a question of audience too, right? Like it might be that I'm making a website, but that's my job, is make websites, and so I always use the same tools. And that person can like tolerate more complexity. But if it's like somebody that's never made a website before, then you want to keep it simple for them. And so I think, I think overall, I think we're going to see more things made that way, but I don't think it's going to go completely in that direction. One more kind of adjacent question that you might be wondering about is sort of, would Figma ever go in that direction? And the general philosophy that we have is, our product goal, first of all, our vision is make design accessible to everyone. So going back to the power and complexity, that's a really important question for us in order to achieve that vision. On the side of, the product goal, I think the product goal that we really talk about a lot is, how do I get things from my head onto the canvas as fast as possible? And in a perfect world, maybe you'd have like a brain-computer interface. You'd think a thought, it would be on the canvas. We're not there yet. Maybe in 20 years from now, with everything that Elon Musk is doing, we'll get there, but not yet. And in the meantime, I think that in order to map things to front-end development, you need to actually create a lot of structure. And that structure gets in the way of flow and being able to really rapidly iterate and work through ideas. And so we've always veered towards the side of sort of making it so that you can like not have to be structured in your thinking, and instead you can really rapidly explore. And then now we're trying to figure out ways to also make it so you can add more structure later, but we're not being super systematic about it and trying to map that to front-end development at this point. So I do think there's sort of like two different experiences that are two different products historically too. Like in the past, there's been, there's like, Photoshop and there's Dreamweaver, for example. Now there might be like Figma, Webflow. So I think these products typically are different experiences.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of us as, was someone speaking? All right, cool. Yeah, I think a lot of us as Hack Club leaders can relate to the struggle of trying to simplify complexity.
Yep.
Yeah. Next up is Melody. Go ahead.
Hey everyone. So my name is Melody. I'm the director of Magic here at Hack Club.
Nice.
And and here at Hack Club, we're a huge fan of Figma. All of our students use it to create stuff for like hackathons or clubs, and also just designing stuff from websites too. I even once saw a 3-story tall banner hanging from inside the stadium, and even that was designed in Figma. So
awesome.
To show you how much we love and appreciate Figma, we created, let's see if I can do this. We created a page on our scrapbook, which is what our students use to share cool things they made all summer. So yeah, if you head to scrapbook.hackclub.com/r/Figma, we just started this page this afternoon, but this is like a collection of all the cool Figma projects our students will build over the summer. Including some of the, and I personally created like some of the social cards you see on social media. So yeah, there's that. I don't have any questions. Yeah, thanks. I don't have any questions for you. I was just super excited to show this. So how much we love Figma here at Hack Club. So yeah.
Thank you, Melody. Really, it makes me so happy whenever I get to see what people make in Figma. So this means a lot to me. Another thing that, just in case it's relevant, would love to get y'all on the Figma community. And so if you're interested in being able to join the Figma community and be able to post this stuff publicly, please reach out.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right.
It's in closed beta right now, but happy to let y'all in.
All right, cool. Next up is Matthew. Go ahead.
Hey, Dylan. I'm a hack clubber from New Hampshire. And I was wondering what you think about college and a college degree in computer science, especially now with the pandemic, with super expensive originally, but it's still the same price, even though you're not going in person. And what do you think about companies not really valuing a college degree as much anymore, and just going to college in general?
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts on this, and also I will point out for everyone in the chat that I don't know how to freestyle at this point, or I'm not good at freestyling. So, but I'm happy to show a little bit of the alphabet aerobics one if you want. But so I think, Matt, for college, well, first of all, I'm just curious for you. Are you? I didn't catch what year you are. Are you about to go to college or?
No, I'm a junior. So
okay,
yeah, I just got into my junior year.
There's probably people on this call that are debating about whether or not to go to college next year. Is that right? I'm just curious if there's any seniors in the call that are about to head to college. Okay, so yeah, there's a few people that are rising seniors and freshmen. Look, like my perspective, first of all, is that I think for computer science in particular, there's a lot of benefits to going to a school that has a good computer science department. And I think some of those benefits are around the community that you get in the department. I think also just there's a lot of fundamentals and theoretical stuff in computer science that is very easy to skip, but becomes very useful as you get into some of the more interesting realms of programming. And so, there's definitely like I wish that I had had a chance to take like an operating systems class, for example. That's something that you can definitely self-study, to be clear, especially if you have a lot of motivation. But that's a class where it's that networking, like there are definitely concepts that I don't have complete proficiency in because I didn't go and take those classes, and I haven't made the room yet in my life to self-study those things. I think you have to counterbalance that with the fact that it is possible to completely go and self-study at this point. MIT OpenCourseWare, even when I was in college, had great professors, great classmates, great TAs. I could use the resources of Brown. It's an amazing computer science department, but I also was watching, for my algorithms class, I was watching lectures on MIT OpenCourseWare. And I found my own different textbooks that we were using, so I could make sure that I could read different textbooks to get different sort of framings on the topics we were studying. And I found that the more I could see them described in different ways, the more it kind of sunk in for me. For some reason, just that was a class that initially I struggled with, and it took me some time to get to the point where I was fluent, and I felt like I had mastery of the material. And so, anyway, I think that it's totally possible to do that. I think there's a part of it's going to be a question for yourself. There is something real about paying for college or having some kind of whether it's in time, money, both, and having that pressure of I don't want to let myself or my family down because I want to go and really achieve here and get good grades. For what it's worth, a lot of people say that grades don't matter in college, and they don't, to be clear. But at the same time, I think that the pressure that you put yourself through to actually get good grades and sort of the perfection and detail orientedness that results in is actually important. So that's something that I always try to do at Brown, was to even, no one's ever asked my GPA, no one ever will, but I still am proud that I put in that work and got to the point where I felt like I had some mastery of these concepts. So there's some broad thoughts. I think in the context of the pandemic, it's really tough. I think, a big part of what made my experience at Brown, and especially in the computer science department, useful. And also when I think of other moments at Brown outside of computer science, like when I was in sort of seminars around political science, for example, that were, these small 10 to 12 people seminars. I just can't imagine how you would do that effectively through virtual means. I think it just is a bit different. And so I think if I was facing the decision, I'd probably go for a gap year. I would make sure it's a productive gap year. I would set a lot of structure up for myself. I would try to probably make some goals that I felt like some other people in my life were holding me accountable for in some way. I think if you're currently in college, for what it's worth, I think it's better to take a gap year after you've had some of the fundamental experiences and some of those fundamentals classes, because you probably have some gaps in your knowledge. And so, I think that that's a better time to go take a gap year and explore industry or the world for that matter. I think it's a great, traveling is awesome and can open you up to so many perspectives, even if it's just, going and seeing like-minded people from Hack Club and visiting the cities they're in. So I think that that's probably the way I'd play it, is to take a gap year. But yeah, I think, it'll be really interesting too to see. My hope, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, is that people see college degrees as less necessary soon. I think that this is less an issue for computer science and more an issue for fields that are outside of computer science. But it's just ridiculous that this has become an expectation in society that everyone has to have a degree. People are going to massive debt around this, and they're also not. Then the debt is not just something that's like a local phenomenon that's going to last for just a few years. Like this lasts for 10, 20 years for some people, and it's even more prevalent for people that don't complete the degree. They don't actually have the increased earning potential, and instead they're just saddled with debt, and you can never get rid of it. You can't. It doesn't go away with bankruptcy. It's the only thing. I really hope that we change our expectations around that, because it's just fucked up as a society that we do that right now. And especially when you're not even going to use the knowledge you learn in college for whatever degree you're getting in your actual job. Like, it doesn't make sense. Why do we require that as a society? So those are some thoughts, but I'm sure we could talk for hours on this topic alone.
Yeah, so that was a really interesting perspective. All right, so we have a lot of questions to get to and only 10 minutes left. So I'm going to ask you to keep your questions or answers a little bit short.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Yeah, so we can get to everybody. No worries. Next up is Taylor. Fire away.
Hi, I'm Taylor Lee. I'm a rising senior in high school. I just want to start off by saying thank you. The reason why I got into UI UX design was mostly because of Figma.
It's awesome.
I love Figma.
Well, thank you for your support, Taylor.
Yeah. So I know the Figma mission is to make design accessible. And I was wondering, how do you incorporate accessibility and inclusivity into Figma and the work culture? And then how are you able to keep your team motivated and engaged despite all the roadblocks you face?
Yeah, great question. This is a very long answer, so I don't know how I can keep it short, but I'll do my best per Rishi's instructions. First off, I'll just define what I'm talking about here. Accessibility can mean a lot of different things. Our vision is accessibility, in terms of giving more people access to the design industry. There's also separately a concept of accessibility around how do you make products more accessible to people that might have vision impairment or other things that are blocking them from using it. And then finally, there's sort of the inclusivity part of how do we make a work culture where anyone can succeed. On D&I, I think that it kind of breaks into three areas for us. The first one is how do we attract a diverse pipeline of people to Figma and make sure that our company is not all white males or something. The second part is as people join Figma, how do we create a warm and welcoming culture where they can succeed regardless of their background, where all people feel included. And the third one is what are our efforts in the wider world? And I think that it's on the first one around diversity and pipeline. I think one thing that's really helped, honestly, in the past 3 months or so, 3 to 6 months, and this is before everything with obviously racial injustice is has been happening for a long time, but Black Lives Matter has obviously been something that we've been talking about more in the last month or so with the tragic killings. I think hiring the right recruiting leader is critical. You need to find someone who's super passionate about D&I issues and also has experience sort of like actually tackling these things because they're very hard to get right. And it requires a partnership between recruiting and also the people that are the hiring managers to actually be successful. I think that, another thing here is that you can't get discouraged. I think there's, especially in a world where there's so much conversation happening about equity or the lack thereof, it's really easy to go into a mindset of like, man, everything's just messed up and like we'll never make progress. And so the more that you can kind of create like a positive culture around like how you talk about and how you address D&I, and you try to make it constructive to actually change things rather than just kind of like, the sort of opposite would be, call out culture where you're only putting people down or you're only pointing out flaws. And so I think you have to try to find ways to level up the team. You can do that through training. You can do that through, also just through like showing results. And then I think also just, finding ways to keep the conversation going and to address it with the group. So for example, for Black Lives Matter, we have tried to make it so that this is a company-wide conversation, use spaces like All Hands to bring everyone together and to talk about these issues. So lots more I could share here, but I know we have a lot more questions. So, but thank you for asking a really deep question.
Yeah, that was a super interesting question. Next up, go ahead, Yev.
Hello, my name is Yev. I am a Hack Club alum. I ran the Hack Club in San Francisco, and I am on a perpetual leave of absence. And
Me too, Yev.
yes, there we are. Join the club. So my question for you is, Figma today is a very powerful and it's a very awesome tool, and it has got to the point where it's actually a standard to some degree. Where if you are interested in design, I think Taylor mentioned that she got into design through Figma. If you're interested in design, you go to Figma. If you are a designer today, you use Figma, or maybe one of the to not be named competitors, but Figma. And with all that, I wanted to ask: was there, since you started like being like a Photoshop in the browser, playing with WebShare, doing cool stuff,
yep.
it to the point where it is today, where it's like a standard people go to? Did the evolution of that come from a holy cow, people are using it, it's a agreed upon standard, or was there perhaps like a grand plan that came in, let's make this a standard that it's a great tool and it's something that more people benefit from using, or was it like a mix and mash of the two?
So is the question kind of like, what was our level of ambition starting off, or
was the kind of defining it as a widespread tool part of a mission or a brought about plan? What do you think? What do you think led to where it is today, I guess?
Yeah, lots of thoughts here. I think one is, I think we were very deliberate about sort of what we did want to tackle and what we didn't want to tackle. And so, while Figma's, I don't know if we're actually quite a standard yet. And there's a lot of people using other tools out there still, and
yes.
we definitely don't see ourselves as winners in the space yet, and we have a lot of work to do. But I think that one thing that's really important is just very clearly defining the areas that you are tackling, the use cases that you're tackling. And so early on in Figma's life, it kind of, the trajectory was sort of something along the lines of like, oh, we'll do photo editing. And then like, oh, photo editing, that doesn't make sense anymore for all these reasons. Like, let's go build Photoshop in the browser. And from there, it's like, okay, Photoshop in the browser, that's kind of like a lot of different use cases. Let's focus in on just a few of those. And then we kind of whittled it down to interface design and vector editing. And those are the two cases that we really wanted to like solve through and through. And I think that the more that we went and tried to figure out how to solve those, the more we realized sort of the long tail of features that people needed for their workflows. And the kind of like the metaphor that I always use for this one is sort of, it's like you're building a house. And, early on, we had like a awesome way to do vector editing. And so people come in, they check out your house and they like see the kitchen. They're like, whoa, your kitchen is sick. And you're like, yeah, I know. I worked so hard in the kitchen, did all this research about like the optimal way to place kitchen things. And, it's optimized in all these different ways and beautiful stovetop. And they're like, yeah, this is great. Do you mind if I use the bathroom? And you're like, oh, sorry, there's no bathroom. And so then, they leave and because they have to go to the bathroom and they're not able to complete like their entire workflow of the house. And then maybe 6 months later, they come back. They're like, oh yeah, kitchen's great. Hey, Dylan, you ever build that bathroom? And you're like, yeah, there's a bathroom now. Check it out. So they go use the bathroom, they come out. Okay, well, do you mind if I like also take a nap? And you're like, oh man, there's no like couch, there's no bedroom, like can't do that yet. So I feel like for Figma, we would build feature after feature, and basically there was kind of this continual process of seeing, okay, we've built this thing, we've added these features. Now what are the things that rise to the top in terms of our customers' needs in order for them to complete like the workflows and interface design and also vector editing. And from there, by adding those things one by one, we started to get more traction. But yeah, I think we were always highly ambitious around wanting to get more people on Figma. And I think that that's also partially driven by the collaboration aspect. You really want to make it so that it's something that everyone on the team can use, because that's when you see the most benefits in terms of network effects. A network effect is when you add another person to the system, then everyone in the system has more value. And so that's true for Figma. And to get there, you have to be kind of ambitious, I think.
Yeah, that was a super interesting question. Thanks, Yev. Next up is Ariana. Fire away.
Hi, I'm Ariana. I'm starting I'm a rising sophomore in high school, and I'm starting a hat club in Louisville, Kentucky. And I just you talked a little bit about how you want middle schoolers and high schoolers to be more exposed to design. What are your thoughts on how we can get them more involved, and even in elementary school too?
Yeah. Honestly, we are figuring this out, and we don't have all the answers here. A lot of the places that we're starting in terms of our explorations around education are actually the college level, which is not the best, most satisfying answer, especially talking with people that are doing such innovative work on the high school level when it comes to programming. But if you're interested in exploring this with us, and this goes for anyone, not just you, Ariana, please send me an email. My email is, and there's someone from our team I'd love to put you in touch with. We actually have someone who's dedicated to leading our education initiatives, and we're trying to figure out how do we do this in a scalable way and figure this out as a program. And so yeah, I don't have a perfect answer, but if you're interested in being part of that, please let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's the right question to ask, by the way. So yeah, sorry, I don't have the perfect answer yet. Oh, Rishi, I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was an awesome question. Thanks for the answer. Next up is Dina.
Okay, hey, so I'm Dina. I'm a hack club leader alumni from Milton, Ontario, Canada. And so my question for Dylan is, I guess my question is, if you had the chance to restart Figma again and you had to hire a team, who would be the first 5 people you would think of that would help you get Figma to the place where it is now? And I mean in terms of public figures that we would know. Or just the types of people that you would consider.
I think easier to answer with types of people than specific names. I think, well, first of all, I can't imagine Figma would not exist ever without my co-founder. So that's one that's very clear. I think, one thing that it's really important to do early on in order to make sure that you're most effective as a CEO is to get someone who can handle all the operational logistics and stuff of doing the company. And so I'd probably find someone on the operations side. Let's see, how many more do I get? So that's 2. I get 3 more. Obviously a designer. And probably I would hire, the other 2 would probably be engineers. I think, one thing we did just to kind of extrapolate out a bit more is I think that the typical trap that people that are really technical run into is they don't think enough about marketing. And so while this wasn't part of our first 5 hires, I think it was part of our first 10 to 15 hires, was one named Claire Butler. And she was a product marketing manager and really helped us before our launch even, and this is months before launch, figure out what are the things about Figma that are going to resonate? How do we talk about Figma? What is the messaging of Figma? And what's our launch plan? And how do we go to market? And these are surprisingly hard questions. They might seem fluffy if you're coming from a technical background, but they're actually getting them to the right place is very non-trivial. And I would definitely encourage people, as you think about starting companies, to invest in making a marketing hire early on. And also, it's, for what it's worth, this is a very hard hire to make. People in marketing and sales, one of their skills is to market themselves and to sell themselves. And so, you have to be, I think one of the things that you should look for if you're making a hire in marketing is like, can this person write? And are they a compelling writer that can like really tell stories and show narrative? And then also kind of do I feel comfortable talking about like product and like how much in sync are we?
Thank you. That's a great answer.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Dina. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, those are some really interesting pieces of advice. Next up is Jake Adler.
I really appreciate your talk today. It was really great. So I'm Jake. I'm from Toronto, Canada, and I'm 16 at the moment. So my question kind of relates to me, and it probably relates to a lot of people out there. But there's probably a lot of outsiders in the programming world who don't really fully understand how to enter it, right? Like I'm an entrepreneur, so it's kind of been difficult for me to go into programming and coding in general. So what tips and advice would you give to people who don't really understand it to enter it effectively and efficiently?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, you're in the right place, Hack Club, right? So this is a community that you can learn from and probably get a lot of good resources from. I'm not up to date on like what the right resources to point you at, but in general, the things I would try to do is, first of all, I would try to figure out what's the right project to work on. And I would probably try to get some feedback from people in Hack Club, in terms of like, is this too ambitious or not? Because I think you want something that you can actually accomplish, and you want to get that feedback loop going of like, I think of something, I make it, and like, wow, that felt really good. And if you can get that feedback loop going, you're just going to keep making more things. And so I would start there. And then once you get to the point where you're starting to get more interested in the theory of it, I think, trying to understand about like object-oriented programming, data structures, algorithms, lightweight system stuff, like how does a compiler work? These are things that I think are really valuable to better understand, computers as well as technology and programming. But yeah, I think that will keep you busy for a while.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so well, that's about it for me, folks. I'll let Zach, the founder of Hack Club, wrap things up.
Cool.
Hello. Cool. First, just thank you. With us. And oh no, is my internet frozen?
We're hearing your voice, Zach.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, there you go. Cool. Well, so I'll wrap up with the final question. I'm pretty sure I've actually asked you this before, but we've done this on a few past AMAs, and maybe your answer's changed. But say when you got on the Zoom call, say you didn't actually get on a Zoom call. Somehow you found yourself teleported back to the year 500 BC, and you don't know how you got there, and you don't know how you did it, but you also realize that somehow you became dictator of the world, and you also realize that you are on one of 3 identical Earths. And in the year 2020, in 2,520 years from now, there is going to be a great war between these 3 Earths, and only one Earth is going to survive. The question is, what do you do as dictator of the world in the year 500 BC to best increase your Earth's chance of survival? Now, there's 3 constraints. The first is everything in your head right now. You know how awesome Hack Club is too, everything in your head right now. But you can't bring anything back with you. You can't bring any supplies. You can't research anything ahead of time. You only know at this moment. The second constraint is that it is the year 500 BC, and you are limited accordingly. Meaning that even though you're dictator of the world, who knows that if you say something, whether people on the other side of the world will hear it before you die, and also you die. You only have the rest of your life to get your plans in motion, and you have to hope and plan for them carrying out after you're dead. And then the third constraint is that the war is inevitable. You don't know how it's going to happen. You don't know anything about it. Picture 3 Earths going in a black box. One comes out. You can assume diplomacy is not an option. And you can start anywhere you want. So you can start in ancient China. You can start in ancient Greece. You can start wherever you want in the world. And you can assume you're not going to get crazy diseases. You can assume that you speak the local language, all that good stuff. So what do you do?
Oh man, this is a hard one. Okay. My brain goes towards incentive systems. So I probably go for maybe like the Roman Empire at that time, given that it's given how vast it was at that point in time, in 500 BC. And then I would probably try to make incentives instead of expansion. I would try to pivot sort of incentives towards technology development and research, and really reward those behaviors. And I think let's see. I would also, I think that alone, honestly, if you were, beyond just like saying to people, okay, here are specific technologies to try to develop and basically trying to guide that myself. I think that, I think that basically if we could give people more of the incentive structures around like, here's what we reward, especially economically, that's probably the best way to like further technological development quickly. And then I would probably try to get some like key tech developed quickly. So, trying to, if I could sort of in my lifetime get electricity going, for example, I feel like that would be a major advance. If I could figure out a way to do communication faster, even if it's like not even the internet, if we couldn't get there for some reason, and maybe if it's just starting to lay the foundation of like there's better like carrier pigeons or something, and like there's a network of that, but trying to basically like incentivize people to create better communication networks and having some good reasons for that. I think that would be something I would really push for as well, because I think that sort of the electricity part and the communication network part, that leads to a lot of other stuff. In terms of culture, though, and preparing for war, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I go full Sparta on it or anything. But I think, maybe I would try to come up with some like cool conspiracy where it's like, some kind of like proof that maybe I've fabricated that shows that it's almost like you're creating a religion or something that you have to prepare for this year. The turning of the second millennia will be a vast war against the cosmos or whatever, right? And basically, if I had that knowledge and knew that to be certain, I'd probably try to influence the start of Christianity somehow. I think, and this is, I feel a bit conflicted by that. I'm Jewish, so I don't know if I would want to fork Judaism, but I think it would be an effective means to do that, and people were especially susceptible to that in that time period. So those are some of the first thoughts that I have.
Amazing, thank you. And can we talk you into rapping for us?
Let me take a sip of water first.
Amazing.
All right. Artificial amateurs, aren't it all amazing? Analytically, I assault, animate things. Broken barriers bounded by the bomb beat. Buildings are broken. Basically, I'm bombarding. Casually create catastrophes, casualties. Canceling cats got their canopies collapsing. Detonate a dime of ding. Daily doing dough. Demonstrations. Done data on the down low. Even other editors with each and every energetic episode. Elevated etiquette. Furious, fat, fabulous, fantastic. Flurries of funk felt beating the fanatics. Gift got great, global goods gone glorious, getting godly in his game with the glorious. Hit him high, hella high, historical. Hey, Holocaust hints here, oh boy. Imitators idolize, I intimidate, in instant, I rise in an irate state, juice to my jams like Jerry Curls, Chuck and Joints. Justly, it's just me writing my journals. Kindly, I'm kindling all kinds of ink on. Cry kick type Brits in my kingdom. Let me live a long life. Lyrically, lessons is learn lame, less just lose to my livery. My mind makes marvelous, moves masses. Marvel and move, many mock what I've mastered. Envision naps, knowing I'm nice naturally. Knack, never lack, make noise nationally. Operation, opposition, off, not optional. Out of sight, out of mind. Why be me obstacles? Perfect poems. Powerful punchlines. Pummeling petty power puffs my prime. Quite quaint quotes, keep quiet, it's quantum. Quarrels ain't got a quarter of what we gotta. Really raw raps. Rising up rapidly, riding the rushing radio activities. Super scientifical science search up. Silencing superstar saps that are soft. Tails 10 times talented, too tough. Take that, challenger, get it tuned up. Universal, unique, untouched, unadulterated, the raw, uncut. Verb vice lord, victorious, valid, violate vibes that are vain, make them vanish. While I'm all well, wise wordsmith, just weaving up words, weed up on my work shift. Xerox, X radiation holes, extra large, X height letters and xylophone tones. Elback, yak mouth, young ones, yaws, yesterday's lawn yard sale, ion, zigzag zombies, zooming to the zenith, zero in zen thoughts, overzealous rhymes, zealots.